So I'd like to be done with this and not, pretty quickly. I don't know how long this one's going to go. We will see. I didn't think about the timing of this, but that's okay. All right, I'm going to go over to YouTube really quick. Opening up YouTube. Oh, we've got 2 notifications. Okay, hang on. We got 2 notifications. Let me look. All right. Nothing against us. All right. So that's good. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go to Theology Central, see how we sound. Nothing against us. All right. Good. So we have no negative comments currently, so that's a good thing. Always get nervous when I open YouTube. Never know what you're going to find. All right, I'm going to go over here to Sermon Audio's webcast tab. Man, our part 1 did not do well in numbers. I hate that. I get nervous when I open YouTube. This is that time of year where it's going to get between now and next Monday. Oh boy. From now, Friday, all the way to not this coming Monday, but the Monday after that. The Monday after Thanksgiving. From now till the Monday after Thanksgiving. That's a more clear way of saying it. The numbers are going to be an epic train wreck, probably. There's going to be wild fluctuations because most normal people will either be traveling, they will be with family, they're going to have time off from work. And so many of that their normal listening to podcasts and listening to things is going to probably dramatically be impacted, and that will reflect in the numbers. So I'm always conflicted, right? Okay, it's Thanksgiving week. All right, let's do a number of broadcasts so that people have plenty to listen to. Because you're thinking, well, they have more time to listen, but in actuality, they don't, because their normal routine where they typically listen is broken up. And now they're traveling and doing things. Now in your brain, you're like, well, you're traveling, you're off work, you've got more time to listen, but they're going to fill that time with family, football, food, activities, and they're not going to be listening. So then you're like, well, do I just don't do many broadcasts for that entire week? Well, I could, but then there's kind of my own therapeutic reasons for broadcasting during that time of the year. So then it's like, well, sometimes I need to broadcast. So we will see. I don't know how we're going to handle this coming week. I don't know. The holidays. So, yeah, we will see. We will see. I'm a little conflicted in what to do. I'm always conflicted in what to do during that time. Most likely you'll get some late night broadcasts. Okay. Most likely you will. It's almost inevitable in my life. That's the way it's going to go. But all right. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It looks like 2 people are listening, and those 2 people are from Texas. That means me and myself are listening, because those 2 numbers represent me clicking on the audio 2 times. So far, it's just me, myself. I didn't even bother to show up today. It's just me, myself. Me, myself, and I. No, I has taken a vacation, got started on their Thanksgiving vacation. So they're gone. It's just me, myself. So now I'm just down to me. Usually I have me, myself, and I. And, that's at least, 3 of us, and we can have a conversation. But now it's just me, myself. Probably next time it'll just be me, right? Yeah, that's weird. It's just the 2. Well, it's not really weird. It just means nobody else is listening. All right, well, that's okay. All right. If nobody else is listening, me, myself, we make a great team. We've been together for a very long time. All right. But now I don't really know how I'm going to do Thanksgiving week. It's always all the holidays, man. Ugh. Broadcasting, holidays, my life, it's a combination, but that's okay. We will see. Are you ready? Let's try to do this. I hope this goes well. I'll tell you everything in just a minute. Are you ready, ladies and gentlemen? Without any further delay, boys and girls, dogs, cats, other animals that may have access to the internet, welcome. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2. And one.
Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good morning. I know you've been waiting. I know you've been sitting at the edge of your seat going, okay, when is he going to do the next part? When is he going to do the next part? Because we need to get to the answer. He left us with the question, but we didn't get to the answer. It's been a cliffhanger. When is he going to get to part 2? Well, I know. Okay, well, actually, not many of you cared because I think only 11 people listened to part 1. So it doesn't really matter, but we're going to do part 2. I would like to make it dramatic, but we're going to do part 2. So I guess what I need to say is good morning, everyone. It is Friday, November the 21st, 2025. It is currently 11:29 a.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from the Theology Central studio located right here in Abilene, Texas. If you have a Bible, Luke chapter 20, because we return to our study of Luke chapter 20, verses 27 through 40. Now, I gave part 1 to AI. Did I give my part 1 to artificial intelligence? And AI had lots of criticisms for my part 1. In fact, it criticized me so much that I basically quit and said I'm never broadcasting again. It wasn't super nice with my part 1. It had a number of criticisms. Some of the criticisms, I wanted to push back on. Some of them I'm like, okay, that's probably true. So I want to have a dramatic, part 2, so that when I give it to AI will be like, whoa, that was amazing. And then I started thinking about it. Does it really matter if AI likes my broadcast or doesn't like my broadcast? Because AI doesn't listen to my broadcast. It only reads the transcripts I give it of my broadcast. So it's not like a listener that I'm trying to, make sure they continue to subscribe, continue to follow, and continue to listen. AI is just passively waiting there for me to hand it my transcript so it can provide feedback, hopefully in a constructive way. It was somewhat constructive. It was a little rude, but that's okay. That's the reason I give AI my transcripts, is so that I can face the criticism and try to figure out what to do better. But it was a little discouraging. But in some ways, the reason I gave part 1 to AI is deep down, I kind of knew that, man, I don't know if that went quite the way I had planned, because in my mind, part 1 was going to be really, really good, right? Here's this passage of scripture, Luke chapter 20, verses 27 through 40. It's this confrontation between Jesus and the Sadducees. It's like this question and answer. And I'm going to take the question and I'm going to break down all of the background to the question so that people will have a better understanding of Luke 20 verses 27 through 40 better than they've ever had. I'm going to do something that most sermons don't do. I'm really going to break this down. That was my idea, my vision. And then when it was over, I'm like, well, I did break it down, but so I don't know. Here we are. All I can do now is just continue. So are you ready? In part 1 of our study of Luke chapter 20, verses 27 through 40, I definitely didn't rush, right? I went like almost an hour. In fact, AI criticizes me sometimes for how long my podcast episodes are, because we know many podcasts don't go that long. However, there is a trend in podcasting to go 3 and 4 hours. So I don't think I don't think an hour is really that radical in 2025, since we have podcasts that go 3 and 4 hours. Okay. But I know I definitely slowed down. I slowed down because I wanted to discuss and I wanted to cover and I wanted to explain and I wanted to teach all the necessary background information, because without that background information, I don't know if this Q&A, this confrontation between Jesus and the Sadducees and the answer Jesus gives, I don't know if it really will mean anything or have any major impact unless you understand the background information. And not only that, I think that's the way we should approach every text of Scripture, is slowing down and breaking down all of the background information so that we truly understand the context, the history. We truly understand what's going on. That's the only way we can understand Scripture. So it was a great opportunity to kind of take you through the hermeneutical process. Right. And so that's what I tried to do. All right. And if you remember in part 1, we looked at levirate marriage. I defined what levirate marriage was and everything about it. We examined the Sadducees. They are sad, you see. Get it? Because of their denial of the resurrection. All right. We talked about their denial of the resurrection. We walked through the trap that they were trying to spring on Jesus. We did that in part 1. And then, now I did this, I did this maybe twice in part 1. I really tried to have us examine our own motives, right? The way we ask questions, how we use questions. Because I think sometimes we act more like the Sadducees than we want to admit. That what they were trying to do, we do. We do it in our personal relationships. We do it in marriages. We do it with our kids. The way they weaponized the question. They weren't asking questions to get information. They were asking questions to lay a trap, to say, gotcha. Okay. Instead of just approaching going, hey, we've got a problem here. You seem to believe this. We believe this. Let's discuss it. No. It was like a debate technique. It was like a trap. And we talked all about that. I'm not going to go in and review every bit, one of those specific parts, because then this episode will go too long and then AI will tell me I went too long, or you will tell me, all right? So now in part 2, we finally are going to hear Jesus speak. We're finally going to hear Jesus answer the question. So I'm going to read for you Luke chapter 20. We're going to start in verse 27, and I'm going to read to right up to where Jesus gets ready to give the answer, all right? So I can try to rebuild the tension a little bit, all right? I can say, all right, now we continue. I wanted to leave it like a cliffhanger, but okay, here we go. Luke chapter 20, let's start in verse 27. Then came to him, that's the him there is Jesus. Then came to him certain of the Sadducees, which deny that there is any resurrection. And they asked him, now just know, these are people who do not believe in a resurrection in any way, shape, or form. They deny basically anything, any afterlife, anything, okay? You just die and that's the end, all right? They're Sadducee, all right? I know I keep giving that ridiculous idea, that ridiculous little saying. I know it's ridiculous, but I'm telling you, it was a big help to me in, first Bible college, second Bible college, when they gave us essay questions and like we had to identify each group and what they believed and everything about them, like essay questions. Well, the Sadducees, I would just remember they're Sadducee because they don't believe in the resurrection. And that would be the little trigger I needed to remember all the things that they denied. All right. So I may say it a million times, but that's okay. All right. So here we go. But just note, the Sadducees do not believe in any resurrection. Just keep that in mind, because immediately you're going to say, well, wait a minute. If they don't believe in a resurrection, why are they asking this question in the first place? Well, yeah, here we go. You ready? Verse 28. They say, Master, Moses wrote unto us, if any man's brother die. Now, the minute they say Moses wrote unto us, or Moses gave us a law, they're referring to Deuteronomy, and they're referring to the levirate marriage that is outlined in Deuteronomy, right? So Moses wrote unto us, if any man's brother die, having a wife, and he die without children, that his brother should take his wife and raise up seed unto his brother. There were therefore 7 brethren, and the first took a wife, and he died without children. And the second took her to wife, and he died childless. And the third took her, and in like manner, the 7 also. And they left no children, and they died. Last of all, the woman died also. Therefore, in the resurrection, wait a minute, guys, you don't believe in a resurrection. Why are you asking me a question about the resurrection when you don't believe in the resurrection? Because they are not asking because they need clarification about the resurrection or they're curious about the resurrection. They're asking a question because when Jesus attempts to answer this, they can say, see, this whole resurrection idea is stupid. It's illogical. It's ridiculous. Gotcha. Right? And so either he has to argue against Moses or he has to argue against the resurrection. So we've got you. Trap. They're not asking because they want information. They're not asking to learn. I know I've been repetitive on that point, but it's such a game, and this game is played by people all the time. And again, it shows up in relationships and everything. Well, what about this? Or did you do this? Or it's all the whole thing. You're being set up. That's why whenever I get asked a question, I'm paranoid. I'm kind of like, why are you asking the question? Now, sometimes I'm stupid and don't realize, wait a minute, I'm being set up. And then I get mad at myself. My thing is, don't trust anyone. Be paranoid of everyone because everyone will come out to get you at some point. All right. That's my philosophy of life. Everyone is coming to get you at some point. Oh, you think everything is wonderful. Just slip up once and that's it. You're going to pay for it. So, that right here just tells me that the whole motive here is messed up, that you don't believe in a resurrection. You're not asking to understand the resurrection. You're asking to trap Jesus. So, last of all, the woman also died. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife of them is she? For 7 had her to wife. Now, I know I'm adding my own kind of emotional tone to the words, and that's always the danger. So I'm trying not to do that, but I'm doing that to emphasize clearly this is a trap. Clearly. They don't care about the resurrection. They don't believe in the resurrection. Because they could have just approached it in a more honest way. Hey, Jesus, we think you seem to believe in this whole resurrection idea, like the Pharisees do, but we struggle with the whole resurrection concept. Let me explain. Let's just say, hypothetically, that there was this, and then go through the illustration, but not doing it so much like, how does this work? It's more just saying, let's discuss this because we struggle with this. But that's not it's not a humble approach seeking information. I'm asking a question so I can say, gotcha. You're trash. Okay. You messed up. It's that kind of thing. And this then brings us to the words we've been waiting almost 24 hours to hear. And Jesus answering said unto them. Jesus answers, and he said unto them, that them are the Sadducees, because they don't believe in a resurrection, and they're asking about resurrection. And Jesus is going to answer. His answer goes from verse 34 down to verse 38. Now, I'm going to read all of this, but let me just go ahead and set this up, all right? Because I think this is important. When Jesus finally gives his answer here, he does, and I think you need to absolutely understand this, he does far more than simply respond to their question. I think in a way he exposes their assumptions, or at least this is my hypothesis. You can determine if this is true or not. I believe he's going to expose their assumptions. I think he's going to slowly but surely, not just slowly, he's going to dismantle their worldview. He's going to expose their assumptions. I think he's going to dismantle their worldview. I think he's going to reveal maybe the true nature of the resurrection. And I think he's going to defend the authority of Scripture using, I think this is very key, he's going to try to use the very scriptures they claim to follow. Now remember, with the Sadducees, if you did not listen to part 1, they only accept the Pentateuch, the Torah. That's what they accept, right? They reject the prophets. And so Isaiah or Ezekiel or Daniel, some of these passages that we think would really show resurrection. And no, they did not, they reject that. But Jesus, I think, is going to utilize really the very scriptures they accept as authoritative, and he's going to use them to ultimately expose and dismantle and destroy their argument. So I don't think this is just a sharp answer. You could kind of refer to it as a theological masterclass, right? It's a full demolition, destruction of an entire worldview, and he does it in just a few words. See, I think this is one of those moments where Jesus does something absolutely brilliant, but I don't think we can appreciate it until we understand the background, and that's why I dedicated part 1 to just the background itself. That's why I broke these into 2 parts. 1, because we have the background took so much time, but 2, I think it sets up now the dramatic conclusion, right? The dramatic conclusion. And I hope it does. Now, how well I pull this off, we will have to see. All right, we will have to see. All right. So he's not simply outsmarting the Sadducees. I think he's correcting their theology. As I've said, he's exposing their assumptions. As I've said, he's dismantling their worldview. He is defending the resurrection. And he's defending the authority of Scripture. And he's doing all of this in a very few words. Right? Now, there's a practical point I can make, but I think I will save that to the end. So are you ready to walk through this answer carefully? First, let me read his entire answer. Here we go. Verse 34. Cued the dramatic music. Dun, 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 dun. And Jesus answering said unto them, the children of this world marry and are given in marriage, but they which shall be accounted worthy to obtain the world and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Now, immediately you see Jesus is acknowledging and accepting a life after this life, a resurrection from the dead. Verse 36, neither can they die anymore, for they are equal unto the angels and are the children of God, being the children of the resurrection. Now that the dead are raised, even Moses, that is so key, Moses shewed at the bush when he called the Lord the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. For he is not a God of the dead, but of the living, for all live unto him. Now, I know we could just read those words and go, oh, okay, well, all right, he got them. But I think when we see it, it's pretty brilliant. So we're going to walk through every little part of this, and hopefully I can do it justice to some level. I'm going to do my very best, all right? So I think the first thing we need to see is Jesus, I believe that's what he's doing here, is that he begins to challenge their entire worldview. I think that's exactly what he begins to do here. And he does this and kind of hit the opening line in verse 34 and 35, all right? Let me read them again. And I will read some of the verses multiple times, and hopefully that's okay. Repeating the words of Scripture should not be a negative thing. Jesus answered and said unto them, the children of this world marry and are given in marriage, but they which shall be accounted worthy to obtain that world and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. If I read it from a different translation, the sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Now, how do we understand this? Is this just an answer, or is it kind of an expose? You see, the Sadducees' trap that they were trying to lay kind of depended on at least one assumption, right? At least the way they asked the question. And the assumption was something like this: resurrection life. See, if there's a resurrection, that resurrection life equals a continuation of this life. That's kind of their assumption. Well, if you believe in a resurrection, well, the resurrection is just a continuation of this life. You have this life here, resurrected. It's just a continuation of what was here. That's kind of seems to be their basic assumption. They seem to, in their mind, if they don't believe in the resurrection, but their understanding of whatever the resurrection is, they kind of understand, well, then marriage continues after death. Earthly institutions continue, earthly laws continue, earthly categories continue. They're like, okay, well, if there's a resurrection, well, then marriage continues. The institutions continue. The laws on this life continue. The categories on this life and on earth continue. They just believe everything continues in the resurrection. That's how they perceive the resurrection. They don't believe in it, but their understanding of it seems to do that. And so many times when someone asks a question, at least theologically, you have to pay attention because sometimes their question shows you their assumption. Sometimes you can pick up in a question that their question is giving a hint of the assumption they are making. Now, it's very difficult sometimes to go, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not going to answer the question. I'm not even going to deal with the question because you're making assumptions. You're loading your questions with assumptions and you're wanting me to answer as if I'm accepting your assumptions. Well, your assumptions are garbage, okay? Sometimes that's what I want to say. Well, the way you're asking that question is, it seems like you've loaded it with a number of assumptions, and I reject all of your assumptions. So you want to have a conversation, or you just want to ask a question so that I can answer it, and then you can like, boom, my assumption was right. Oh, the games people play. And look, Christians do this, non-Christians do this. This kind of gamesmanship shows up. It shows up in marriages. It shows up in relationships. It shows up with parent versus child. It shows up at work. So their questions have these assumptions built into it. And I think Jesus immediately tries to destroy their entire premise and all of these assumptions. I think the first point Jesus tries to make here is resurrection life is not like this life. Right? So I think the very first thing Jesus begins to do here is he begins to challenge their entire worldview. And he does this by saying, hey, resurrection life is not this life. See, the Sadducees imagine the resurrection is simply life 2.0. Same structure, same relationship, same law, same social order, same Torah, Pentateuch categories. They assume resurrection is just earthly life, but extended. And Jesus says, and this is kind of just, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing what I think Jesus is trying to say. Your whole question collapses because you are assuming resurrection is the same as this age, but the resurrection is a different age and a different order of existence. See, the Sadducees, now listen to this carefully because I think this is important. The Sadducees are trying to show a contradiction in Moses. Hey, if you believe in a resurrection, you're contradicting Moses. Jesus is trying to show a contradiction, in a sense, in their own imagination. No, you're contradicting because you are imagining what the resurrection is because you don't really understand it. So this is where the argument is. They have assumptions, and Jesus is going to try to demonstrate, no, the resurrection life is different from this life. It's not a continuation of all the same structures and all the same categories. So the first thing Jesus is attempting to do here is he's trying to challenge their entire world view. That's what he's doing, and he's challenging this entire worldview by trying to show them that resurrection life is not like this life. I think that's key. Next, Jesus tries to explain why marriage does not continue. All right, look at verse 36. Right? I mean, well, he kind of does that a little bit in verse 35 because he says, but they which shall be accounted worthy to obtain the world and the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage. So immediately he's showing you there's a difference in the resurrection. They're not given in marriage nor they marry. Verse 36, neither can they die anymore. Obviously, everything is dramatically changed in the resurrection, for they are equal unto the angels and are the children of God, being the children of the resurrection. Now, before we can move on, we do need to, I have to pause. I hate to do this, but I have to pause because we got to clear up, I think, a common misunderstanding. In verse 36, when Jesus says they are equal to the angels, that does not mean human beings become angels. All right? This idea is popular in some areas of culture, but it has no biblical foundation, okay? What Jesus does mean is simply this: angels do not die, angels do not marry, angels do not perpetuate a family line through resurrection. Angels live in the direct presence of God beyond the conditions of earthly human life. That's what Jesus is trying to explain. Angels do not die. Angels do not marry. Angels do not perpetuate a family line through resurrection. And angels live in the direct presence of God beyond the conditions of earthly human life. So Jesus is not describing a change of nature as if resurrected humans become a new species. He's describing a change of condition. Immortal instead of mortal, glorified instead of corruptible, living in God's presence instead of life under the curse, no longer bound to earthly institutions like marriage. It is different. It is different. It's not just a continuation of this life. It is different in every way, shape, or form. So Jesus is explaining, he's destroying their worldview because their worldview seems to assume that it's a continuation. He's trying to destroy that. And immediately he does so. And the second major thing he's trying to do, her second major point that I'm trying to make, is that he's trying to explain why marriage does not continue. So we could say it this way: resurrection life shares certain characteristics with angelic life, immortality, glory, the absence of death, but resurrected humans remain human, however, with a glorified body. Right? Now, this is important because the Sadducees, remember, reject not just the resurrection, but they reject angels as well. So Jesus is hitting both of their false doctrines at the exact same time. All right, so I just want to make sure we clear that up. Humans do not become angels. They become like angels in certain ways, but they do not become angels, okay? When someone says, oh, so-and-so died and they're an angel in heaven. They're not an angel, okay? That's not theologically sound. Oh, it may be comforting and it may be beautiful and it may make for a good idea for a show or something, but no, it's not. No, we don't become angels, right? There are similarities, right? We become like unto them in certain ways. So now with that aside, now we can kind of walk through this, all right? So Jesus introduces an idea that the Sadducees rejected, right? He's obviously introducing the idea of existence beyond death, clearly. He's also clearly introducing angelic-like existence. They would reject that. He clearly is introducing immortality. They reject that. He's also speaking of some kind of a transformed mode of being after this life, which they would reject. So this is kind of the logic here. Are you ready? I'm going to try to walk through the logic here. Marriage is tied to mortality. Marriage exists in this age because death exists in this age. Levirate marriage itself proves this. Someone dies, someone must raise a name, someone must preserve the family line. the resurrection eliminates the entire system because one, there's no more death. There's no more need to raise a line. None of that exists. The whole system is different. The resurrection eliminates the entire system. Marriage is tied to mortality. Another thing Jesus tries to do here, if there is no death, there's no need for preserving a line or a lineage. Another thing, if there is no death, there is no need for earthly marriage structure. Next, resurrection life is angelic in the sense that it is immortal. Not that humans become angels, but that humans are immortal, unthreatened by death, and not bound to earthly institutions. And he's going after their very assumptions. You don't get it. And the resurrection, everything is different. You're trying to take this earthly system of levirate marriage, of death, of preserving a family line, and transferring that over to the resurrection where there is no death, there is no more need to raise a family line, and, well, just like the angels, there's no marriage or giving in marriage because it's a different it's a different system. It's a different existence. So in a roundabout way, what Jesus is saying logically, marriage cannot exist in a world where death does not exist. The Sadducees' problem is not the law of levirate marriage. Their problem is a defective understanding of resurrection. They reject something they don't truly understand. You see, the Sadducees, if I said Pharisees, I apologize. The Sadducees are assuming that resurrection life is just earthly life extended, and Jesus is declaring resurrection life is a fundamentally transformed life. It's a new world. It's a new age. Let me read this from a different translation. If I can find it right here. Let me go to Luke chapter 20. Let me read those verses again. All right, let me read them again. Luke chapter 20, verse 27. All right, or no, let's go to verse 34 when Jesus gives his answer. Jesus replied, "Marriage is for people here on earth. But in the age to come, those worthy of being raised from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage, and they will never die again. And the respect they will be like in this respect, they will be like angels. They are children of God and children of the resurrection." He's like, your entire assumption is wrong. You don't even you're asking a question about something you don't even believe in, and what you don't believe in, you don't even understand correctly. Your entire question is loaded with assumptions. And I'm not going to go along with your assumption. Or assumptions, plural. So let me go back and walk through this, all right? I know there's a lot of little sub-points here, but the major points. Jesus is challenging their entire worldview. Their entire worldview he's going after. They don't accept resurrection, angels, and he goes after all of that. A second thing he tries to do is he tries to explain why marriage does not continue. All right? And I hopefully I broke all of that down. All right. I think a third major thing. Now I know there was a lot of subpoints and all of that, but the third major thing, Jesus is he defends the resurrection from the Torah itself. All right. And I think this is pretty brilliant. All right. What he's going to try to do is now defend the whole concept, the whole theology, the whole doctrine of resurrection. But he has to use the Torah because that's all they will accept. Because he could have went to Daniel 12. Many shall raise from the dust. He could have gone to Isaiah 26. Your dead shall live. He could have gone to Ezekiel 37 and the dry bones. He could have gone to Job 19. In my flesh I shall see God. But he doesn't do that. Why not? Because the Sadducees do not accept those texts. Why use a text they don't accept? So Jesus is going to have to meet them on their own ground, right? He's going to quote from the Torah, or at least reference the Torah, because that's the only scripture they were going to accept. Now, he didn't accept their assumptions. He challenged their assumptions, but now he's going to be like, okay, but you accept the Torah. I've already dismantled your assumptions, but now let's take the Torah to see if the Torah accepts your assumptions or accepts my assumptions. And he does this in verse 37 and 38. And look what he does here. Now that the dead are raised, even Moses. Now that's such a key. See, he's going right back to the Torah. That's all the Sadducees will accept. He showed at the bush when he called the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. Let me read it from a different translation. Verse 37. But now, as to whether the dead will be raised, even Moses proved this when he wrote about the burning bush long after Abraham, Isaac, Jacob had died. He referred to the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. So he is the God of the living, not the dead, for they are all alive to him. Man, he's going right after their entire concept. To read it from a different translation, all right? That the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the bush, where he calls the Lord the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. For he is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for all live to him. It seems that what he is quoting here is Exodus chapter 3, verse 6. That seems to what he's at least referencing. If I go to this translation, I'm going to go to different translations. Exodus chapter 3, verse 6. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He's making a reference to Exodus 3, verse 6, which is right there in the Pentateuch, right there in the Torah, and the Sadducees accept this as authoritative. Now, this is important because the Sadducees believe Moses did not teach the resurrection. Jesus is trying to demonstrate that Moses did teach it. The argument, here's kind of the argument. God identifies himself to Moses long after the patriarchs had died. I am the God of Abraham. Not I was the God, I am the God. Not I was the God, I am the God of Abraham, but Abraham is long gone. God is not the God of non-existent people. If Abraham is gone, truly God, then God's statement would be meaningless. You're not the God of Abraham because Abraham is dead and they don't believe in a life after. But if God is saying he's the God of Abraham, it would seem to imply that Abraham still exists somewhere, right? Therefore, the patriarchs must still exist, maybe not in a bodily resurrection yet, but in a conscious covenantal life before God. If they still live before God, then resurrection follows logically and necessarily from covenant faithfulness. I think this becomes very, very important. And in some ways, this covenant idea, he made a covenant with Abraham. He entered covenant with these people. I think this has become where his argument becomes almost unmistakable. If God bound himself to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by covenant, not temporarily, not symbolically, not conditionally, but eternally, if there's an eternal aspect to the covenant, then the covenant cannot simply expire because their bodies entered the grave, meaning somehow they still exist. A covenant relationship that is based on some kind of an eternal covenant demands the continued existence of both parties. If the patriarchs are truly gone, if they're snuffed out, if they're non-existent, if they've been extinguished, then God's covenant promises to them would collapse into emptiness and it would not be an eternal covenant. A covenant with someone who no longer exists is not a covenant at all. So Jesus seems to be arguing something here. The very nature of God's covenant faithfulness requires that his people continue to live before him. If the covenant endures, the people under the covenant must also endure. And if they endure, resurrection is not just possible, it seems to be inevitable. Let me state it this way. And this, I'll quote, I have this directly in my notes. The God who makes eternal covenant promises must keep those promises eternally. Resurrection then is not optional. It is the logical consequence of covenant. So in a sense, what Jesus is trying to do here is force the Sadducees to admit their own contradiction. They affirm the God of Abraham, but they deny the continuing existence of Abraham. Jesus shows you cannot have one without the other. If you believe in the God of Abraham, well, then Abraham has to exist because he can't be the God of that which is no longer existing. But he's the God of Abraham because Abraham still exists somewhere, somehow. Now, what is the result of this? Well, look at Luke chapter 20, verse 39. Then certain of the scribes answering said, Master, thou hast well said. And after that, they durst not ask him any questions at all. It may not appear to be devastating to you. It may not appear to be devastating to me, but it is utterly devastating to them because he just destroyed their assumptions. He destroyed their entire worldview, and he used their own authoritative scripture to dismantle them. The scribes here, you see, notice the scribes say, you well said. The scribes approve because Jesus just defended a resurrection using the Torah. The Sadducees here are publicly humiliated. They came to trap Jesus, and instead they're exposed, they are defeated, they are corrected, and they are silenced. Not by rhetoric, not by cleverness, but by Scripture itself. Now, before we kind of talk about why his answer matters here, I want us to just be challenged a little bit here. I think there's two issues. There's two practical issues I at least want to discuss. Now, I know that the point here, and I don't want to go too long in the practical because then it'll be like you took away the power of the argument you gave about the answer. I think I just took the answer apart pretty good. I think I'm gonna give myself a golf clap. I think I did pretty good, all right? I think I took the answer apart and made you understand what was happening. But I think there's two practical issues that we can look at ourselves about. First, how do we utilize questions? Do we use questions to trap people? Do we use questions to try to trick people? Do we use questions to set people up? Do we use questions? And again, I mean, sometimes I catch on. Sometimes someone will ask me a question. I'm like, oh boy, okay, if I answer it this way, but if I answer it this way, sometimes I just want to say, could you just tell me the answer? I know that's going to ruin it for you because you're trying to set me up. And when people try to set you up, they're not your stinking friend. They don't love you. They're trash, okay? Because that's just garbage, all right? When people try to set you up, oh, I cannot stand that, okay? Oh, I hate that. Oh man. Oh, I do not like that. And parents sometimes do that to kids. So, let me ask you a question. You already know the stinking answer. You're trying to set them up. You say, well, I'm just trying to prove if they're being trustworthy. You're setting them up, okay? Don't set people up. I can't stand that, right? Just say, hey, we need to talk here. We got a little problem. And then handle it like mature and honest and straightforward. Oh, I don't like that. And so I think that's a problem, how we can use questions to manipulate, to trap people, to try to control the narrative. And it's like a debate technique. There's just so much about it I can't stand. So much about it I can't stand. And I just think that there's major problems with it. I think it's deceptive, it's trickery, it's not showing love or respect or kindness or anything, okay? Oh, I don't like that at all. So you can tell I get bothered. Another thing we have a tendency to do, so we use questions to trap people, but there's also this mentality of using questions in order to win a debate and then being so, I trap them. And Christians do this usually when we're talking to people. Maybe we're arguing with a Catholic, we're arguing with a charismatic, we're arguing with an atheist, and then we'll use questions, set them up and be like, gotcha. And then we're like, ooh, and then we tell the story, ask this question and they didn't know the answer. And we almost are in a very braggadocious, arrogant way, as if we just defeated the other team. Well, that's just as wrong. Because now we're bragging about winning an argument. We're not concerned about the eternal soul of the person we beat in the argument, because that person we beat in the argument could be getting ready to burn an eternity in hell. And we're more bragging about how we won an argument. Oh, I was out knocking on doors and this atheist, and he started being all smart aleck, and I asked him this question and he didn't know the answer. Boom in his face. Woohoo! You're such a big man. Now that atheist is going to burn in hell, and you get to walk around bragging about how you shut the atheist down with your brilliant rhetorical approach. That's garbage as well. And trust me, I've been guilty of all of this. I've used questions to set people up countless times. My time in debate, oh man, I love to do that to people, right? Oh, come on. I would do that all the time, sometimes just for fun. I'd be at work, not much is going on. I need some kind of excitement. Let's engage in a discussion. Let's ask some questions to someone. And I'm asking a question because I know they're not going to know the answer, and I'm setting them up and I'm trying to frustrate them because it's just a good time. Oh yeah, I'm a jerk and I've been a jerk. And I will be a jerk because I'm a sinner, not excusing it, but acknowledging it. And there are times I like to tell the story where, I got him right here and I got him right there, because it's good storytelling and I can make it dramatic, and how I was all set up and their expression. Oh, it's fun to tell those stories, sitting around telling the stories of the glory days, to quote, Bruce Springsteen. But the point is, we all fail in doing this. And if I'm going to be honest, when I read, and no one dared to ask him any more questions, there's a part of me that's like, boom, yeah. Oh, I want to be able to do that. How can I learn how to do this? Man, I want to be able, when someone asks me a question, I so dismantle them and destroy them that they walk away broken, devastated, and humiliated, and they will never ask me a question again. Yeah, there's sometimes I just think in this entire thing, not only do we need to understand the background of the question and understand the brilliance of Jesus' answer, we got to be honest. We got to see ourselves in all of this. We got to see ourselves. And there's plenty to be convicted about. Plenty. We're supposed to love our enemy. We're supposed to do good unto them. We're supposed to speak truth, not lies. I think we're supposed to show people some level of respect, not trying to trap them. Now, why does the answer Jesus gave matter so much? Well, I think he does far more than trying to answer a trick question. I think he reveals, number one, a true doctrine of resurrection. And we need to correct our understanding of resurrection. Resurrection is not this life continued theologically. Oh, you may want to believe that resurrection is this life continued. I know we like to believe that, right? Because we want heaven to be everything this life didn't give us. Or we want heaven to be everything this life gave us that we love. We want it to continue. We want resurrection to be a continuation of all the good things in this life and an erasure and erasing of all the bad things in this life. We know that. We want to shape eternity into our own idea. But resurrection is not this life continued. It's a new age. It's a new order. It's a new world. It's a transformed existence. And I know that you may not like that, but that's what Jesus is clearly articulating here. The Sadducees' real problem, and Jesus reveals their real problem. He reveals that their real problem, and that their deepest error was not the question, it was their entire worldview. Their error wasn't the question, it's their entire worldview, the assumptions that their question revealed. Jesus reveals the continuity between Moses and resurrection hope. Jesus showed that the resurrection is not a Pharisaical invention. It was embedded in the Torah itself. And I think Jesus reveals the nature of God. God is not the God of the dead. He's the God of the living. His covenant people continue with him beyond death. Resurrection is the natural consequence of God's character. And with all of that, end scene, the conversation ends. Not because Jesus walks away, because the Sadducees had nothing left to say. In just a few verses, he defended the resurrection. He affirmed the authority of Scripture, especially the Torah, the Pentateuch. He seemed to reveal the nature of the age to come. And he seemed to kind of expose the poverty of a worldview that tries to limit God to this age only. God is not limited to the way things are. What is coming can be completely fundamentally different. Maybe that's the lesson here. Do we approach Scripture with the same assumptions? Do we approach Scripture with our own assumptions? The Sadducees carried theirs. Do we carry ours? They tried to limit God by categories. What do we do? Do we try to put things in categories? Do we assume that the age to come looks just like this age? Do we try to force God into our systems of logic and expectations? Maybe Jesus calls us to something different or deeper, a bigger God, a greater hope, and a resurrection that transforms everything we know about life itself. God is not the God of the dead. He's the God of the living. That should change everything. Now, I know someone is going to email me. I say, but I know when I die and get to heaven, I'm gonna find my favorite dog. I'm gonna find my favorite cat. I'm gonna have my husband. I'm gonna have my wife. I'm gonna have my girlfriend. I'm gonna have this, and I'm gonna have my kids, and everything in this life that makes me happy is going to be there, but only better. Well, you're assuming that the life to come is just like this life. And Jesus seems to say, and I'm quoting from this translation, Jesus replied, marriage is for the people here on earth, but in the age to come, those worthy of being raised from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will never die again. And in this respect, they will be like angels. They are the children of God and the children of the resurrection. Everything is going to be different. Now you say, well, what does it look like? How is it all going to work? I can't tell you what is not said. I can tell you what is said. Let me read it to you again. Marriage is for people here on earth, but in the age to come, those worthy of being raised from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage, and they will never die again. And in this respect, they will be like angels. They are children of God and children of the resurrection. There is some complete, total transformation from a theological perspective. That's the way we have to answer it. Now, if you want to believe something beyond that, well, then by all means, do whatever you want. Just don't try to force it into the Bible. Right? I mean, we all want to believe drastically that how things are going to be in the next life. We do. And because there's so much about this life that we don't like, or there's things in this life we love so much, I want to believe when I get to heaven, I'm going to have the best stereo equipment that's ever been made, and I'm going to be able to listen to music undisturbed for 5 billion years. Because I love music. And I want the best stereo equipment that's ever been made, but I can't afford it. I mean, I could go on and other things, right? Oh, I've had animals that I had great connections with. Caspian and Connor, 2 miniature Dachshunds. Had great connection with them. Caspian had seizures just like I did, could tell when I was going to have a seizure. And every time I would have a seizure and wake up on the floor alone and a pool of blood, he'd be laying there right there next to me. Right there next. He was the one who was always there. He tended knew when it was going to happen. And when it happened, I would wake up and he was laying next. The first face I would see would be the face of Caspian. And then I was there with him when he got the tumor, huge tumor in the side of his face. I cared for him and was there when he passed. Connor, Caspian's brother. After Caspian died, Connor was there. Connor hung out with me. Nobody could get within a mile of me. If you came near me, he would go after you. He tried to drive everyone. No one could get near me. He stayed next to me. If I went to take a shower, he was laying next to the shower. He would not leave my side. And I was there when he died. So yeah, you say, well, they're just animals. Yeah, but they meant the world to me. They were there during thick and thin. They were my buddies. So yeah, do I want them to be there? Yeah. But I can't try to transport this life to that life. It's different. It's transformative. It's something unique. And Jesus is trying to show that, hey, Sadducees, you're making an argument because you think this life is going to be like that life. It's different. So I have to at least take that into consideration. See, I think we want heaven to be what we want it to be so that we will be happy. Instead of making heaven about, well, God, we make it about us. Hey, God, you're there. Great. Oh, awesome. Great. I'm glad that you're there. Now just make sure you got everything set. We want it to be like Fantasy Island. You know, the plane. Remember that show? Remember from the 70s? Okay. And we're going to get there and the plane's going to land and it's going to be the fantasy that we've always wanted. Everything is going to be the way we want it. This life doesn't work that way. Why would I think that life is going to work that way? I do know certain things will be present, right? I will not die. Doesn't appear there's going to be any more pain, suffering, death, or tears. Or sin. And we like to paint this picture of what it's going to be. What it's going to be like. Just imagine. And that stinking song that used to drive me crazy, I can only imagine. Well, we can do a lot of imagining of what it's going to be like, but let's just make sure our imaginations are not our doctrine of the resurrection, because that becomes a problem. The Sadducees were imagining what it was going to be like, and Jesus is like, sorry guys, you got it all wrong. All right. 59 minutes. AI is going to tell me I went too long. AI is going to be like, you were a little too long on the end there. You're a little too redundant. AI is going to tear me apart, but that's okay. I'm going to give it to AI and let it tell me how badly I did, because, nothing feels better than being told you're trash. That's okay. All right. There we have it. We will do some maybe more work on Luke 27 through 40? I believe 40. I don't have it. I just closed both of my Bibles. And maybe we'll do some sermon reviews or something. I don't know. When you create kind of a little mini series, you got to do more than 2 episodes, but I didn't know where to put the 2 episodes. So there we go. All right. It's Friday. Oh, and we have a whole holiday week coming in front of us. I don't even know what to do when holiday weeks. I don't know. The listening numbers are going to drop dramatically because people are out of their normal listening routine. They're going to have extra time off, but they're going to be filling that with football, food, family, travel, all of that stuff. And, but I also know for many people, the holidays is not a fun time, right? While other people have food, family, and activities, they're going to be alone, 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 alone. So I do like to turn on the microphone and at least provide content for those people. Everyone else may not even get to that content, but it's there for the people who are just like, well, great. I'm glad everyone else is having a good time. I'm alone. I like to be able to do something there. So we will see. Yeah, we'll see. I'm not going to make any definitive plans on what I'm going to do, but we will see. Probably be prepared for some late night broadcasting because that's usually where I feel that for people. And so, yeah, we'll see. We'll just see. But whatever you are doing, whatever your situation is, if it's the best situation and it's wonderful and there's food and there's family and there's companionship, congratulations. For those of you who it's going to be a completely different vibe and a completely different feeling. And then we'll see what we can do to make it better for you. All right. And either way, thanks to all of those who've listened to this podcast for 2025, who have supported this podcast in 2025. That has meant the world to me this year. And hopefully we'll have a good 2026. If we make it there, or if I make it there. Thanks for listening. God bless.